In June of 2019, I bought this Orient SEM78002DB from a seller on eBay for 145 euros with an additional 10 euros for shipping. That came at just under $190. Yet, my hesitation in recording this review comes from my inability to currently find this JDM or Japanese domestic market watch around that $200 price point. You see at the top of the list of priorities for this channel are the reviews of available for purchase, great value for money wristwatches. I came up on a solid deal. Even before the watch arrived, I knew I wouldn't have any buyer's remorse. And as soon as it did, I opened the box and gazed at the dark ocean blue dial shimmer with the light. It's an interestingly beautiful moment I'm sure many of you can relate to. You have the watch with you for the first time. After only experiencing it through your computer, you can now touch its cold steel and feel its weight. And as each detail is discovered and admired, there's a sensation of proud satisfaction the moment you realize the watch is more than you expected. This sport watch execution represents everything right about Orient and its brand. So today on the Dapper Wrist, I'll be reviewing my best alternative to the Rolex Oyster Perpetual, with the hopes that you can find this watch under $200. But even if you can't, and more to the point, this Orient deserves its time in the spotlight. In that light, the multifaceted hour batons twinkle and gleam atop a cobalt dial with just enough sunburst to animate its color. The dial is flat, with silver printed minute hashes and lume dots atop each applied hour baton. The 12 o'clock hour marker is comprised of two batons with two lume dots. Just underneath that, we find the Orient logo with twin lions presenting the crowned O shield. I'll admit, my first impressions were not good. It seemed a little silly. There's just way too much going on there. Why not just have the crowned O shield? I mean, how sick would that look if it were nicely engraved on this crown? But as of late, the big cats, they've grown on me. Just below the logo, we have the name Orient, printed again in silver with automatic under that. The two diamonds printed above the 6 indicate the flat sapphire crystal on this watch. The words water resist beneath that refer to the 30 meters of water resistance. It's a simple dial with day and date window that don't muddy the waters. Would it look better if that window were right at the edge of that dial? Yes. Its symmetry would be better served. But the uninterrupted minute hashes and lume dot keep a visual consistency, camouflaging what could look out of place. The frame is polished from the top with a silver bee blasted finish on the bevel. Moreover, that exact same finish is found on the date wheel. The only watch in my collection that has that consistency in detail. Another only for this watch is the way in which the day wheel is operated. A recessed button at the 2 o'clock needs to be pushed to change the day. The crown is pull-push with no hacking, as you can see. The case, bezel, bracelet, all stainless steel. The folded clasp is a 2-button deployant with 3 micro adjusts. 5-link bracelet is solid with both brushed and polished links. And you'll be dealing with push pins when sizing this up. And let's not forget the end links. Those are hollow. The bezel is polished with the top of the lugs having circular brushing. The case has a polished chamfer separating the vertical brushing on the sides of the case from the circular on top. The screw-on case back indicating made in Japan, among other specs. But if you give me a quick minute here to remove the case back, we'll see that it reads Movement Japan, Case China. Before opening this watch, I was under the impression that everything about Orient was in-house. According to Worn & Wound, the Orient caliber 46943 has been in production since the 70s. This caliber is heavily based off the Seiko caliber 7006. The movement ticks at 21,600 vibrations per hour with a 40-hour power reserve. It features a day and day window as mentioned with a 21 jewel count. And from the looks of it, this is clearly a utilitarian automatic. Now if you give me another minute here to screw on the case back, I'll start rattling out its measurements. From 3 to 9, the case measures just under 39 millimeters. Lug to lug length is at 42.8 millimeters. Lug width, 20 millimeters, with an 18 millimeter taper at the clasp. It's a subtle taper with the 2 millimeter difference taking place at the first 2 rows of links. And I think it fits the watch head well. Last but not least, the watch is 11 millimeters tall. With all that being said, let's start taking out the trash. First negative to go into the trash bin are the hollow endings. Not only because they're hollow, but they also reveal that this bracelet was not designed for this watch. It's a bit disappointing Orient didn't try to incorporate these sharp angles on the lugs to the endings. I'm a big fan of the lines. The second negative to go out is the 30 meters of water resistance, but only because it looks more sporty than dressy. If it were the other way around and it looked more dressy, 30 meters would be more than enough for a dress watch. And the last negative to be mentioned is the lume. It starts out strong, mostly in the hands, but the lume dots, they're just too small and quick to fade. Pivoting now to the half negatives, and if you don't know what a half negative is, it's basically a negative or a con with potentially positive aspects. Potentially can't be a word. First, the folded clasp. And only because it's not milled out of a solid chunk of steel. Its positives are its ease to operate and the comfort it offers. Second is the recessed button on the side of the case that operates the day wheel. For most, I'm going to assume this is a negative because it requires a tool to set. But for me, that inconvenience gives the watch character, individuality, and that appeals to me. And third is the China-made case. But don't get me wrong, it's not a half negative because the case is made in China. What I want to make clear is, I do not believe the case is of inferior quality. It's only a half negative because the case is not made in Japan, and that sometimes in-house overhyped prestige is now blemished. So what are its positives? First, it's so easy to read the time. Bold long hands with a beveled divide, always catching the light for precise and accurate reading of the time. Second, the watch is comfortable and a pleasure to wear. The bracelet's edges are soft enough to be pleasant, yet sturdy enough and weighty enough to inspire confidence on the wrist. This is a comfortable watch. Out of all the watches featured so far on the Dapper wrist, this compact 39 by 43 millimeter watch sits best on my 6¼ inch wrist. Did I mention another millimeter? It lays perfectly flat, somehow knowing where it belongs. And it doesn't deviate from that spot. It's surprising considering this bracelet will be found on other Orients, meaning this bracelet was not made for this watch in particular. Which leads me to my next pro. It's such a cool, beautiful looking wristwatch. When a watch still manages to look good in a stock bracelet, it could mean one of two things. Orient either got lucky with the right bracelet, or the watch has versatility. This watch just went from being sporty. Alright y'all, I've been practicing y'all. So just bear with me. As you guys may know, for some reason, I'm against editing. I guess it goes back to my rock and roll days. I was one of those cats that was big on tube amps. And in my head, this is me trying to keep it analog. It makes sense to me, y'all, but I know it's a little silly. Something about keeping it old school. To dressy. Now you note that this band is about 1 millimeter too small. They sent me the wrong one, but a replacement is on its way. But I'm just trying to make my point here. This is a good looking dress watch. This is the Dapper wrist, y'all. And you guys know I prefer dress watches and I prefer leather on my watches. That's a good look, man. That is a really good look. Not bad, Orient. So you saw sporty to dressy. Now give me another quick minute here. I hope you guys don't give me no thumbs down because of this non-editing nonsense. But if that's what you want to do, man, then go ahead. I ain't gonna trip. I would prefer a thumbs up, a subscription, a tight comment. But if you want to give me a thumbs down, go for it. Casual. This is how I've been wearing this watch for the most time. But in preparation for this channel, I've been wearing it on the bracelet. And thanks to you guys, thanks to the channel, I got an appreciation for bracelets now. How sick is that? So you guys know that I'm raving about the bracelet on this watch. That is really comfortable. On this NATO, it is way lighter and way more comfortable. And it still sits nicely. This is an awesome watch, y'all. So if you're out there wanting to scratch that Oyster Perpetual itch, but lack the funds for it, or you simply can't justify spending that kind of cash, consider this Orient right here. You're not going to have the 5-pointed crown, but you also won't be getting ripped off.